Whoa, thank you so much. I am thrilled to be back here in Western Kentucky, here in Bowling Green, and to be introduced by two public officials, one current, one former, who I admire so much. And I have to reinforce everything that Governor Beshear just said. Those of us who don't live in Kentucky, who care about jobs, education, and health care, watched with great admiration as Governor Beshear led this state. And the results were quite extraordinary. The drop in unemployment, the increase in high school graduation, and the drop in Kentuckians who did not have insurance. You know, I may be, along with my husband, kind of old-fashioned about this, but I think the reason you hold public office is to help people. Help them so that they are better off when you end than when you started. So if you oversee a big drop in unemployment, that's what you're supposed to do. If you make it possible for more students to graduate from high school and go to college without getting burdened by debt, that's what you're supposed to do. And if you run the best healthcare exchange and expand Medicaid in a way that was the envy of every other state in this union, that speaks volumes to me. Because, in case you haven't noticed, these jobs are hard. You take a lot of incoming criticism. You're constantly being second-guessed. And yet, Steve Beshear kept going and kept producing results. And he had a great partner, the Speaker Pro Tem, Jody Richards, who was on the front lines standing up and fighting for all these results, these positive results that benefited not just the people he represented here in Bowling Green, but the people across the Commonwealth. So I am proud to be introduced by former Governor Beshear, and I am so proud and delighted to be introduced by my dear friend, your Secretary of State. Allison Lundergan Grimes is one of the most dedicated, hardworking, effective public officials anywhere in America. She has improved the functioning of the Secretary of State office. She has moved it into the 21st century. She is working to make sure that all of the issues and concerns around voting and the other work that comes to her attention is handled with the highest degree of professionalism. I just love her. As she said, our families have known each other, and we are, deep and true friends. But I'm also a great admirer of this young woman and her dedication to public service. Thank you so much, Allison. And I've got to acknowledge someone I've known for a long time, too. Sheriff Peanut Gaines, who's here with us. Now, Peanut's been around helping my husband and me for a long time, too. I always feel a little safer when he is. I always see him when he's got that hat on. He never takes it off. He was reminding me earlier that when I was a senator from New York, I came out of one of the Senate buildings, and there he was. I immediately recognized him. How could you not? And I was so glad to see him then, and I'm thrilled to see him today. Thank you for your years and years of service, my friend. Thank you, Peanuts. One other introduction. The National Forensics Debate Team is here. This is a group of young women who have all just graduated from Western Kentucky. And I had the privilege of meeting them earlier, and I asked them for some advice. Because they're clearly really good at public speaking. They know how to make a really effective argument. So I said, you all have to come help me. Because I need new material. I need help. And I've got these young women who are experts, having vanquished everybody from every other university across the United States. I'm having so much fun up here. I love coming to Kentucky that, I've got to remember what I'm supposed to say to encourage you all to come out and vote and tell you what's really at stake in this election. But I think you kind of know or you wouldn't be here. There is so much at stake. And here's how I look. Afford to attend Western Kentucky University and not come out with burdensome debt. And I think we're stronger together when we help those who already have debt pay it down by refinancing that debt and getting it off their back so that they can go on with their lives. And I think we're stronger together when we finish the work that Governor Beshear and others started on the Affordable Care Act. Look, before there was something called Obamacare, there was something called Hillary Care. Right? I worked really hard at my husband's request back in 93 and 94 to see how we could provide health insurance at an affordable cost that would produce quality, given the system we had, which people were invested in, and covered through all kinds of claims and attacks. Honestly, Republicans have been attacking me for 25 years, and they're not going to stop now. But here's what I want you to know. I've been called nearly everything, but I've never been called a quitter. And I will not quit on you to make sure the Affordable Care Act works the way it's supposed to. We're going to get the cost down, co-pays, deductibles, premiums, prescription drug costs. But we're going to build on it because it is working for so many people. Allison and I were in Paducah this morning early, and we stopped at a big restaurant well known for providing great breakfasts. And I was shaking hands, and there was a man sitting down, and he had a cane, and he said he had something to ask me. And I leaned over, and he said, will you protect the Affordable Care Act? Because it's the first time I've been able to have insurance in a really long time. And I don't know what I would do without it. And I said, yes, sir, I will. I want to improve it, but I will defend it. Because when you think about the millions of people who have been helped, and when you think about the great work done here in Kentucky, hundreds of thousands of Kentuckians like that man and like that woman who is waving at me right now have health insurance who didn't have it before. And that is the kind of country we should be in the 21st century, helping each other, lifting each other up. So that's why, as Allison said, I have been laying out plans. I want us to have more good jobs with rising incomes. I want us to invest more in infrastructure jobs, our roads, our bridges, our tunnels, our ports, our airports, our water systems. We have work to do, and it's good work. And these are jobs that can't be exported. So why on earth don't we have a bipartisan agreement to put Americans to work fixing our infrastructure that will make us more competitive economically. And I want to do more to follow the example right here in Bowling Green. You have both kept and attracted manufacturing, right, Jody? And so you've got people working in advanced manufacturing. Corvettes, if I'm not mistaken, right? These are good jobs, union jobs, and they repudiate what too many people in our country say. People say, well, we can't make anything in America anymore. I don't buy that. Come to Bowling Green, you can see things being made. Go to Paducah, where a young woman introduced me and told me that she was a chemist working in a manufacturing plant in Paducah. I said, do you think we can bring manufacturing back and keep it here? She said, yeah, with the right incentives we can. So I have a plan to do just that. I am not turning my back on manufacturing in Kentucky or anywhere else in America. And it takes a partnership between the government and business. That's what I believe in. I believe in this partnership. That's how we have outcompeted the rest of the world for so long, because we understand that the government has a role, but the private sector has to do the heavy lifting. So we need to change the tax system so it provides incentives for keeping jobs here, not shipping them out of our country. And I have proposed that if a company wants to pick up and send jobs out of the country, if that company ever got 1 penny of taxpayer help from the federal, state, county, or local government, they have to pay it all back. And that we will make it as expensive as possible for them to ship jobs out, and maybe they will see the error of their ways. We also have to change the way companies think. They've gotten much too focused on short-term kinds of results. So I've got plans to incentivize more profit sharing. If you help make the profit, you should be able to share in it, not just CEOs and high executives. And that will give us a greater investment and help to build income and wealth for a lot of working people. We also have to do more in clean, renewable energy. And I think there's a role for Kentucky to play. You know, in my $30 billion plan to revitalize coal country, and I'm the only candidate who's actually put a plan on the table, it includes accelerating and putting more money into research to figure out how we can continue to use coal. Carbon capture and sequestration. How are we going to do it? And again, over in Paducah, I met a man who has a lot of ideas about that. And I told him, you look at my plan, go to my website. That is a part of it. Because we do have to transition, but we need to take coal country and coal miners and their families with us and not leave them behind. So I want to grow the economy. And it's not enough in my humble opinion, and I don't think voters at the end of the day are going to accept. If we're in a debate, for example, and this is where I'm going to have these young women prepare me, let's just
Alright guys, our feed is a little glitchy. Bear with us. We are trying to get that fixed for you.
They're going to be great.
There we go.
I know how to do it, but I'm not telling you what it is I'm going to do. And I'm going to say, here's what we're going to do, here's what we're going to do, here's what we're going to change the tax code, here's how we're going to incentivize people to do it. Now, some people might say, oh, you know, all anybody wants to hear is just, I'm going to do it, but I'm not telling you what I'm going to do. See, I don't believe that. Maybe in the preliminaries, like the Republican primary, that's all they wanted to hear. But Americans take their vote for president seriously. And they're going to be looking at that TV screen and saying, he still doesn't have anything to tell us? Well, wait a minute. I think we know a little bit about how to create jobs. I think my husband did a heck of a job creating jobs back in the 90s. And it is factual that the economy does.
Again, bear with us, guys. This feed from Bowling Green, Kentucky is a little spotty. Stay with us right here on News Now, guys, while we continue to work to fix that feed. Hillary Clinton, Bowling Green, Kentucky.
And I've said this all over the country, and I know there's places where he's more popular than other places, but let's be fair here. He inherited the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. And I don't think he gets the credit he deserves for making sure it didn't fall into a Great Depression, that we were even worse off than we were. So we've got work to do, and I'm really clear about that. Look, we have to have change, but we need the right kind of change. We've got to build on what works, not go back to what didn't work. And so what I'm offering builds on what works, but goes further. And we've got to do more for small business, because that, after all, is the primary way we create new jobs in America. And the fastest growing segment of the small business world are minority-owned and women-owned small businesses who need more support doing what they're trying to do to build their business. And Allison said it, and I will repeat it. We must guarantee equal pay for women's work who are in the workforce. Now, you ask, why? Well, other than a fundamental sense of fairness, this is about family income. This is about the economy. This is not a woman's issue. This is a family economic issue. If you've ever had a mother, a wife, a sister, or a daughter, and everybody in here has had at least one of those, then you know if the woman in your family is shortchanged, the whole family is shortchanged. And at some point, we've got to say, hey, enough is enough. If you work in America, you deserve to get paid for the work you do, men and women, and we need to enforce those laws and make sure that it's accomplished. I got to say, everything I've just said, the Republicans disagree with. I mean, really, they don't see any reason to make these kinds of investments in jobs. And they keep denying that there's any problem in things like equal pay or anything else. That is not a policy. Their economic approach still is totally aimed at the top. If you get a hold of Donald Trump's plan for the taxes of this country, it is trickle-down economics on steroids. Slash taxes on the wealthy. It is a billionaire's plan for other billionaires. And he's been asked about it, and he sees no reason to change it. It would increase the debt of our country, which would raise interest rates, which would suppress economic activity. And he's gone so far as to say he wants to renegotiate the federal debt of the United States of America. You know, this is not a real estate deal. The full faith and credit of the United States of America is one of our most valuable assets as a nation. So there'll be a lot of time to raise questions and draw contrasts. But you're seeing some of the same here in Kentucky, where your governor wants to turn the clock back on the progress that you have all made over the last years. And cutting the budget of colleges and universities in the state, when anyone who looks at it knows that public universities are the engines for economic development. The kind of work that is done at universities creates jobs, spins off opportunities, whether it's Western Kentucky University or Morehead State, where my husband saw students in Eastern Kentucky in a research project to miniaturize satellites, right here in Kentucky. I think what we invent in America, we should produce in America. But we won't invent if we're cutting the budgets of our colleges and universities and making it more difficult to be economically competitive in the future. And I will add one additional word about the Affordable Care Act and about the Medicaid expansion that was carried out so effectively under Governor Beshear. Other states that refused to expand Medicaid, because this was the only southern state that did, other states that refused, you know what's happening? Two things are happening. Rural hospitals and clinics are being shut down because there's not a revenue stream. When I was campaigning in South Carolina during the primary there, I visited some places that were losing their hospitals because the governor there would not expand Medicaid. We're also seeing that when you don't expand Medicaid, which remember is paid for by the federal government right now, 100%, and then the state gradually assumes what, 10%, Steve, right? 10%. 10%. So people in New York are paying for people in Kentucky or Texas or anywhere else to get health care. But if you don't expand Medicaid, you don't get the federal help. Kentucky was pretty smart. Steve Beshear understood that. He knew he could actually provide health care to poor people, working people, middle-class people without insurance right here in this Commonwealth that would be paid for by people all over America. That's the way it's supposed to work. That's the way we've always worked in America. You know, we pay in our taxes and the people who need it get it, and it comes from everywhere. So we've got the Affordable Care Act with Medicaid working here, and if it is disrupted or eliminated, it will end up costing this state money, and it will end up shutting down services, and it will end up hurting a lot of Kentuckians who have health insurance. Now, I don't understand why anybody would want to do that to the people that he serves. You know, I was raised to believe in the golden rule, and I don't think that means he who has gold rules. I think that means you're supposed to put yourself in the other's shoes and think about what it feels like to be a hardworking person who doesn't have access to affordable health care unless they're so sick they end up in the emergency room. So I hope that your governor will have an epiphany and realize what is at stake here. But I also hope you remember that everyone running for president, including their presumptive nominee, have said they want to do exactly the same thing, to end the Affordable Care Act. And I think that would be a gigantic step backwards. It would hurt people, but it would also undermine our capacity to take care of everybody. Because if you live in a rural area, even if you've got the best insurance you can get, if you've got to drive a long way to get the health care you need, you're not getting accessible health care, are you? So this is all interconnected. We are all interdependent, whether we like it or not. And we've got to understand that and plan for it. I also want to say that the governor is right about how when you go vote tomorrow, you're voting not just for a president, you are voting for a commander-in-chief. We live in a complicated, dangerous world. And the United States must continue to lead, and the president must protect Americans. And that is exactly what I will do. The very important experience that I have had as a senator and secretary of state gives me the insight that I think anyone you entrust this job with has to have. And I was thinking just of some of the issues that I worked on as Secretary of State. You know, I put together the sanctions on Iran in order to drive them to the negotiating table so that we could negotiate an agreement to put a lid on their nuclear weapons. We have to watch them every single hour of every day. My slogan is distrust and verify. We can't let them get away with violating the agreement, but we are safer by having moved out their highly enriched uranium, by having inspectors in their facilities, by having disabled their centrifuges largely. We are safer. The region is safer. Israel is safer. And we can't just throw that away because some Republicans either don't understand or don't agree with it. When I was Secretary of State, I was in Cambodia when I got a call from the Israeli government saying that once again rockets were raining down on Israel and they couldn't get them to stop and they were going to have to invade. They didn't want to invade because that puts their soldiers and people at risk, and it's a really terrible conflict, but they could not get a resolution. And I said, I will be right there. Being right there meaning flying from Phnom Penh to Tel Aviv, driving to Jerusalem to meet most of the night with the Israeli security cabinet to hammer out what could we ask for and who could we go to see that would end the activities by Hamas. The president of Egypt at that time was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. His name was Morsi. I had to fly to Cairo, sit with him, and negotiate a ceasefire that he then sold to Hamas, and we were able to end the hostilities. Ask yourself, if you have a president of the United States who has put at the center of his campaign his rhetoric about Muslims, how much more difficult will something like that become? How do we put together a coalition to take out ISIS when members of that coalition are majority Muslim nations? So what Trump says about foreign policy is not just offensive, it's dangerous. And people know that you got to have a steady hand in the White House. And it will be at the center of this fall campaign, because I don't think most Americans want a loose cannon in the Oval Office. And when he has said he wants more countries to have nuclear weapons, when he has said he would have us use nuclear weapons against ISIS, which is not even a state, when he has said he would pull us out of NATO, which is our most important military alliance, that raises not just red flags, that raises danger signals that people have got to pay attention to. And then finally, we have the task, and it falls to not just people running to be in office, but it really falls to all of us about how we're going to unify our country. We are stronger together when we work together, when we listen to one another, when we respect each other. And when you have someone running for president who has been so demagogic and engaged in insulting so many people, that further divides us. And that's not who we are as Americans. We are people who, yes, have deep disagreements, but we've always found our way to listen, roll up our sleeves, and solve our problems. That is what I will offer in this campaign. And I have said, I will go anywhere, anytime, meet with anyone to find common ground. I did it as First Lady. I did it as a senator. I did it as Secretary of State. I know how hard it is. I'm sure the governor and the Speaker Pro Tem and the sheriff could tell you stories along with Allison about it's not easy when people just are politically against you. But that's what you got to do when you are in this position. And I believe you can find that common ground. And you can build those relationships. So I want you to understand that I'm going to campaign for this office on those basic principles. How do we produce positive results for Americans? How do we protect our country and lead with strength, smarts, and steadiness? And how do we unify us across the partisan divide that is threatening our country? You know, I do believe we are great already, but that is not something we can take for granted. And we can become even greater if we start working together to create those opportunities that will give every person a chance to live up to his or her God-given potential. I need your vote tomorrow. I need you to go out and work for me. Bring everybody you know to go vote in the primary, and then let's do everything we can to win Kentucky in November.